Welcome to the Automation Unplugged podcast, the podcast for technology professionals, featuring leading industry personalities. I'm your host, Ron Callis.
Let's get started.
Hello there. Ron Callis with another episode of Automation Unplugged. I hope this recording, if you're watching the recording, is finding you very well. And I hope you're having a great spring so far. 2025 has certainly been an interesting start to the year. I would call it a volatile start to the year in terms of business. Like there's really great things happening for a lot of our clients. And then some of our clients are having some real challenges. And certainly a lot of the markets and equities and all sorts of, I guess, the broader economic climate that affects us and affects you, our listener. It's been a pretty wild beginning of the year. Maybe one of those bigger factors is, tariffs on, tariffs off. And I think everybody's head's just spinning in terms of what the president has going. I'm confident and optimistic that things are going to stabilize or normalize as this year goes on. But this is going to be a great opportunity to have a conversation with one of our industry's leaders, one of the best, I would say, very loved and respected integrators in our country. And that is the one and only Brad Larkin. He is the CEO and co-founder of Argenta. And they are just an awesome integration firm out of Sandy, Utah. And let me go ahead and bring in Brad, and let's see how he's doing and what he has to say. Brad, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing good, man. It's here in Florida where I'm recording from. It's the beginning of, I don't know, allergy season, pollen season. It seems like every gosh darn tree and bush and plant outside has opened up in the last week. So my senses, all my bodily functions are like screaming at me. So I'm on allergy medicine. So if I sneeze during this interview, I'm just giving you the reason or excuse right now. But how are things out there in Utah?
We're great. We're great. We unfortunately missed out on a lot of snow this year, as anyone that unfortunately booked a vacation to Park City found out the hard way. So we've not been having a good snow year, but hey, it keeps the vans on the road and traveling a little bit smoother. So we'll take it.
Awesome. Well, let's get everybody introduced to you, Brad, and your company. Tell us a little bit about your role there at Argenta and what type of work do you guys do and where do you do that work?
So we're operate out of Sandy, Utah, which is about 20-minute drive from downtown Salt Lake City. We specialize in kind of the higher end custom integration side of things, primarily serving the Park City market, but all of the northern Utah Valley. Got a team of incredible people, 22 people or so. But we're lucky to be in one of the most beautiful states there is. So,
are you from that area?
I grew up about an hour north of here in a town called Ogden, Utah. So not too far away.
I think I drove through Ogden a year or two ago. I had one of my, we here at One Firefly, we practice EOS traction. Mm-hmm. And we had a quarterly meeting and we wanted to, with our leaders, and we wanted to, spice things up. So we did it in Jackson, Wyoming. And I want us to, so you tell me if this makes sense. I know we flew with my family, we flew into Salt Lake and then we drove up and we drove over to Jackson. It was like a 5 or 6 hour drive. Would we have gone through Ogden?
You would have passed through there. It's about 5 hours from the Salt Lake City airport. And unless you got a private jet, that's the best way to get there.
That is okay. So for your business, do you guys generally do projects right there in the Park City, metro market, or do you travel around the country, or do you follow your clients and will you do things other places?
We do things all over. Most of what we're doing is going to be in the Park City market. There's, some anyone that's been here knows of Snow Basin, which is what, Ogden is known for. 'Cause it's about a 20-minute drive to Snow Basin Ski Resort, which is a very famous one up there. That's where they do a bunch of the Olympic downhill and a bunch of great things that you'll be seeing in 10 years from now, because you get the Olympics coming back, which we're excited about. But yeah, primarily that area is growing. The Park City area is growing, and then obviously being in the Salt Lake City Valley. Utah's kind of unique in that, don't quote me on this, but there's like 80% of the population lives in a very small section on the northern end of Utah. So then there's just a bunch of desert in between here and St. George.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got
But
it.
but yeah, we have clients and we have projects that we're doing all across the country.
And what's a normal project for you guys? Like, what's a small project and what's an average project?
I'd say, because of our location, we've got our showroom is right on I-15. So we get a lot of walk-in traffic, a lot of people that are just looking to, we're kind of known in the industry for being theater experts, because that's kind of where we started. And in Utah, everybody's got a basement and everybody's got a house that's a little bit too big. So our small projects are generally going to be those one-room theater remodels that are great ones for the schedule to fill in the cracks. So I would say on the small side, it's going to be in that $20,000 to $25,000 range. But I would say a lot of our whole home projects are going to be in the 250 range. We're doing AV projects that are $1 million plus. We've done single room theaters that are $1 million plus. So kind of runs the gamut. But I would say the average is probably going to be around 100 and 150 if I averaged all those out.
Okay. Now I want to toot your horn, because a lot of people don't toot their own horn. So I'm going to do it for you. When I was doing, when I say by I mean my team that was helping me research all about you and the business. Obviously we've had a business relationship for years, but you and I don't get to talk every day. My team pulled up a pretty cool win or recognition for you guys. I'm going to share my screen, see if technology behaves here. And that was, I see back in 2021 that you guys were Power Level Member of the Year with ProSource. And
Yes, yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. So for maybe those that have been living under a rock and don't know what ProSource is, if you could describe what that is for the audience, and then maybe tell them how you garnered this status.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. ProSource, huge part of our business. Jim Pierce, shout out to him. He's really doing some amazing things with the program. It's a buying group, as most people know. There are several of them out there. ProSource is the one that we chose to align ourselves with about 5-6 years ago. We just kind of looked at all of them and which groups we kind of identified, both product wise and culturally. Identified ProSource and are very fortunate that we've been involved with them. They provide a ton of resources for us, a big part of what we do and a big part of why we've been successful.
That's awesome. Take us back in time, Brad. Help us understand your story. You have a super interesting founding story. And like any entrepreneur, you've had ups and downs and everything in between over that journey. Take us back. Where'd you come from?
Yeah, so grew up in Ogden. Was fortunate to have a very wonderful family growing up. Didn't have much of an electronics background, but went to school at Utah State. Graduated from Utah State with a couple business degrees. I just kept going there until scholarship money ran out. So I got a degree in business, entrepreneurship, finance, and economics up there. But
3 degrees?
Yeah, 3 degrees. So I
Wow.
finished the first one and still had some money coming in, and I was making more money as a student on the scholarships than I was outside of that. So I figured, you're only a student once, so enjoy it. So I did, and I've really enjoyed. I enjoy academics quite a bit, so I enjoyed that. Out of school, had a bunch of dreams about being an entrepreneur. I'd always been self-employed. I paid for college running a landscape company that I started with my brothers. when I was like 7 years old, and we drove around mowing lawns and doing things like that. Provided us with a great opportunity in college where we could hire that out and we could travel the world. So we would spend 2, 3 months every summer just backpacking around the world in different countries. So some very unique experiences there.
Wow.
Then post college, unfortunately, that was around 2008. So during college, I met with a bunch of wonderful business owners as part of my entrepreneur degree. Everybody promised me a bunch of jobs, and I felt like the sky was the limit. And then unfortunately, everything crashed my last year there, and everybody apologized. All the job promises that I've been given were taken back because nobody was hiring at the time. But it presented some great opportunities. So started a bunch of random small companies, had a company that actually did website SEO work down in Arizona for a little while. Recognized that wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. I wanted something a little bit more hands-on. And it was actually because the company that I'd started, I'd moved down to Arizona. And when I decided that wasn't really what I wanted to be doing, I drove back to Utah. Happened to be driving through Las Vegas the week of CES. I'd never heard of CES, wasn't familiar with what it was, but some friends of mine were there for the show, and they said, "Hey, why don't you, come on in? It's a good time." So went to CES, and while we were at CES, that's was my introduction to the industry.
What do you
Uh,
recall when you walked into CES for the first time and you saw how many halls were filled with interesting tech?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was taken back by the magnitude of what is CES. As everybody knows, it also kind of coincides with a different festival or show that goes on at the same time. That's quite the opposite.
The show that
So
shall not be named.
yeah, the show that shall not be named. So the combination of the two experiences of being born and raised in Utah was kind of a unique, eye-opening experience. But coming out of that, especially as the other startup that I had just barely left and was looking for new opportunities, it became apparent very quickly that this was a big thing and had a bunch of potential. So that's kind of where the whole thing got started. Is me and a couple guys just came back. I never thought that I would stay in the industry. We just kind of started doing home theaters on the side to fund our other ventures because we could install a $20,000 home theater, make good money for being a 20-year-old kid. And then that was actually feeding the other things, from energy shot company to a few other things that I was doing. None of those really took off over the next 3 years, but the AV side, doing home theaters, always kept paying the bills. So after about 3 years of pursuing other things, finally just asked myself the question, well, what if we just devoted all of our time to the thing that's been consistent? And so that's really where the start began, as we stopped all the side ventures, focused 100% on AV. And then in the next 2 years, we kind of maxed out what a two-person crew could do. Um, we
What year
became
would that approximately what year would that have
that
been then?
that would have been about 2010, 2010, 2011 or so.
Okay.
And
So just
so,
coming out of the worst of it was over.
yeah,
The North American economy was just starting to come back.
yeah, which had given that, it was almost, kind of one of those stories where probably wouldn't, if the timing at the time in 2008, it seemed like the worst situation possible. Once I was getting into the industry in 2010, 2011, a lot of integrators unfortunately had gone out of business. They just kind of left the cream of the crop that was still surviving that. So the handful of companies that were still around, we met with a few of them because we knew we kind of maxed out what we could do at our size without having a showroom and other resources. So met with a company called Theater Extreme that was actually, one of the original chains of theater stores. They had, I don't think at their max, they had 4 or 5 locations on the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken. We partnered up with them for about 6 months. They hit record sales, and we said, hey, we feel like it was because of us. They disagreed, and so we parted ways with that venture. And that's when we came in touch with another company called For Home Control, which has a colorful history because that was one of the very first Control 4 dealerships in the world. Started in Control 4's backyard, by one of their founders that was allowed to actually use the Control4 logo as part of their branding at the time, which was,
Wow.
yeah, you can't imagine that now, but yeah, so big freeway sign that had the big Control4 logo, said for home control. Everyone thought it was Control4. So people would call assuming that they were reaching Control4. And so that company we had run into at a home show, they had heard what we'd done with the previous company and said, hey, maybe you can lend us a hand over here. So we stepped into that. And this goes into a really long story that I'll skip through. But if anybody wants to buy me a beer sometime, I'm happy to walk them through the whole story.
Yeah.
But it could be an episode of Real Housewives in Salt Lake City, because we got involved within 2 weeks. I showed up to the office and the doors were literally chained shut. No word, no notice. Found out that the people that I thought had owned the company actually didn't own the company, and it was actually a relative of theirs that was funding it. Really long story there, but they were shut it down once they had kind of figured out that the whole thing was kind of a scam. And so we had negotiated, we kind of hit crisis mode because we still, had people's money and projects to finish that were just going to be SOL. We reached out to the money behind the whole thing and made them an offer they couldn't refuse to essentially get them back some of their losses. They decided to invest in us, which I'm grateful they did. We were able to in turn, take care of all the customers that had entrusted them with their money, get those projects cleared out, get the assets for pennies on the dollar. And that was kind of the foundation story of what is now Argenta. So For Home Control went bankrupt. We bought all of their assets, started Argenta. This was in 2013. And then we've just been kind of growing ever since with a really great team, which I should, before we go on too much further, I got to give a shout out to my business partner that I couldn't do things without, equal owner, Justin Rollins, who runs our sales side, who isn't with us today, but a magnificent human, and couldn't be here without his help and his support.
Now I'm sharing for those that are listening to the audio. I just put on screen the website for Argenta, and of course the company page, which has Brad, who's here with us in the recording, and Justin, his business partner, and then a bunch of the faces of your stellar team. Where did the name come from, Argenta?
We'd actually hired a marketing company that did some market research, and Argenta is Latin for silver. And so they had come to us and said, hey, silver, it's not much of a thing in the industry now, but at the time, they talked about silver lace speaker wire and different things silver being a really great conductor of sound. And then the market research showed that it was a name that clients identified as, high end, and the branding that we were looking for. And so that's where the name came from. And no criticism to any of the other wonderful companies out there, but it's really been a benefit, because instead of just using a couple letters as our name, AV something or other, it's been a benefit that the name Argenta seems to stand out in clients' names over some of our competitors.
Yeah, I mean, I'll weigh in with my 2 cents there. I love a company name that can mean anything you want it to mean through your messaging and your branding activities, versus right now I'm going to get tomatoes thrown at me or bad reviews on this, but you take like 10 words: AV, control, home, music, audio, you name it, put them in a hat, jumble them together, pull them out, and you can name 90% of the
Yeah.
industry if you pull them out in twos or threes.
Yeah, and side benefit that we hadn't even anticipated is starting your name with an A always gets you showing up first on dealer locators. So when we were first starting out and we didn't have status with any of these vendors, they'd list all the people with status, and we were always the next one on the list. So we kind of blended in there, which was a side benefit we hadn't anticipated.
So I know you, so I'm just going to go there. You're a super fit guy, right? You lift
Yeah.
weights, you're fit. You and I have recently had a similar injury in the gym. What I'm curious, was your college scholarships tied to athletics?
No, it was all academic. I always wanted to be, I always aspired to be athletic, but at 5'7" and a stocky individual, it just didn't, other than wrestling, which is what I did in high school and a little bit in college. Uh, I never reached my dreams there. Since then, I got into CrossFit, and CrossFit favors a stocky individual like myself. So I found some moderate success in that. But yeah, at the time in college, I was just, both my brothers are doctors. One's an orthopedic surgeon. The other's family practice. My sister is successful with a medical staffing company. My family just has always pushed education and had that mentality that, you're only limited by the effort that you're willing to put in. So while I wasn't always the smartest one in the room, I was always willing to dedicate more time to compensate for that by doing research and studying and memorization, all those things. So through those abilities, I was able to have success there.
Tell me about wrestling. I'm going to venture to say your average person listening has never wrestled. And I mean like formal people, not like goofing around in the backyard, but like wrestled. I was a wrestler through middle school and high school, and a little bit in college. And my son wrestles, and he's only gotten into it in the last couple of years. And I love the sport. I'm curious for you, like, do you have, um, what are your thoughts around what that particular sport did for you in terms of the person you are today?
Yeah, I would say, I only did it because my dad was quite successful in it, and I was trying to follow in his footsteps and make him proud. But the lessons that I learned from that, have an impact, I would say, on a daily effect. Because as you know, when you're doing a sport like wrestling, where there's a very tight time frame, at least in high school, it was 2-minute rounds or whatever, and it was 100% for 2 minutes, and you would get 30 seconds in and feel like there's no way I got another 90 seconds or whatever left. But you just had to focus on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You'd finish those 2 minutes, you'd rest for a few seconds, and then you'd start all over again. And that ability to focus when there's something that feels insurmountable, but focus on just the next thing and the next thing after that, to just never give up and keep going, as something that benefited me then. It benefits me in business. It benefited me in CrossFit, because CrossFit's kind of a similar. You'll be hit with a workout that seems impossible on the surface. And if you focus on the entire 20, 30, 45-minute time domain, it would be. But if you can focus on just keep moving for the next 30 seconds, and then 30 seconds after that, you can always get through there. And that mentality has affected everything that I've done, both in the office and out of the office.
In CrossFit, did you end up taking that to the level where you were competing?
I sure tried. I was fortunate to kind of, when I moved back to Salt Lake City, uh, like any young entrepreneur, and I didn't have much money, I called every gym, not just CrossFit, but any gym that was in the area, asked if anybody needed audio equipment, TV speakers, whatever. Happened to get a phone call back from Salt Lake City CrossFit. They were about to move facilities, and they said, "Hey, we'd actually love speakers." So I traded them for a membership for some speakers back in the day. I think they probably anticipated me being there for a year or two, but I milked that membership for everything I could. Found some success, and then became best friends with the owner, best friends with some really great athletes there. They had a great run where they were going, anyone that's familiar with CrossFit Games is the Super Bowl of CrossFit. And at the peak, I was training with probably 15 individuals that all went to the CrossFit Games year after year. And so I would say at my best, I was on the B squad. If somebody was going to get hurt, I might have been able to step in,
Yeah.
but I was never quite to their level, but aspired to be, but happy to be that close to the top. We
So,
actually hired a lot of great employees out of the gym, because I'd see kids coming in at 5 a.m. grinding away, and it's like, if you're that dedicated to dial in your nutrition and to work that hard, you'd be a great technician or something else. So for the first 5 years of the company, I'd say we probably averaged 3 to 4 employees at any given time that I'd found from the gym environment.
do you still practice that? Is that like a secret weapon? Like hiring
Not
from a CrossFit gym? That sounds brilliant.
we get, to this day, we still get comments almost on a weekly basis from clients or builders that meet the team and say, do you have to go to the gym to work for this company? And because we got a lot of big, strong boys
Yeah.
and some very wonderful, talented, athletic women too. So it has been a big part of our company, focusing on health and wellness is a big part of what we do. But having that ability to have people that work for you that have that, motivation, that get up early and, day to day grind in and out, as well as the physical fitness on a technician level to be hanging TVs and working hard throughout the day and not getting tired and not going to, the gas station for lunch, also has its financial benefits as well.
So, Brad, you and I have something else in common. Although I think you've taken it a lot further than I have. So I want to have fun with this one, and that is uh, the book "Extreme Ownership" by Jocko Willink. And that I loved that book when I read it. There's a handful of books that I just loved, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I believe this. I practice this. I live this. Like I love this content." And I had my leadership team actually read the book, and I talked about it. I talk about it a little bit less now. Um, you and I'm going to share the screen so that people can kind of see what the book looks like. But this book is this is an important book and set of beliefs in your life and in your business. Can you maybe expound on that?
Yeah, I'm late to the game. This book's been popular for a long time. I discovered it probably 5 years ago when I was Googling, books that every person must read. And this showed up in just about everybody's top 10. And as soon as I read it the first time, I just identified with every principle. I'm like, this is everything that I aspire to be as a leader and everything I want my team to aspire to be as far as an organization. And so quickly it became a mandatory read. So, but anybody that comes to work for us, we talk about it during the interview process. They're told that they're going to be required to read it within the first, 2 to 3 months of their employment. Once they've read it, I take them out to dinner. We sit down and talk about what it meant to them, how to apply the principles. We have posters around the office reminding people of key principles. And it's something that has, kind of given us a backbone and some dialogue to talk about routine problems that come up almost on a daily basis.
Take us through some of those. And I'll give you the maybe the first one. I don't know if it's the first one top of mind, but there's one that I love, which is when something bad happens, something that's unexpected happens in your life. A lot of people's first reaction might be to complain or to be frustrated or to be upset. What does extreme ownership teach you to say?
Extreme ownership preaches to respond to that by saying good. And if you haven't seen it, Google good Jocko Willink. There's a lot of videos out there on YouTube with pumped up soundtracks blaring in the back and Jocko, overlaying his dialogue, talking about the principle. But the principle in short is just that if anything bad happens, there's always a positive. If sales are down, good. It means there's more time to work on my sales presentation. If techs are fighting in the field, the response is good. This is an opportunity to identify ways that we can communicate and come closer together. There's always an upside, and it's very easy to be sucked into the negativity of those situations. I lost a big job that I thought I had in the bag. Good. There's going to be another opportunity. Maybe the resources that I would have diverted to this project that I thought was so magical can be better used and more profitable used somewhere else. So having that mentality, which I personally, I refer to the book as my Bible, as part of our company Bible as well. It's something that I reread every single year, and every single year I identify new habits that either are striking me differently because of different obstacles or a different place the company is, or habits that I've identified that I've let go that or I've gotten soft on that I need to buckle down on. Some other key principles that we talk about in the team is there's some great chapters on no bad teams, only bad leaders, and that's one thing that we talk about with our project managers and other department heads. That ultimately, and I tell this to people every time I do an interview that you don't have to be the smartest person. You just got to be willing to work harder than everybody else. And if people with proper leadership, and I take this one extremely personal because anytime I feel like the company is having a failure or having a setback, instead of pointing the finger at this department head or this person screwed up or if only we had this employee or whatever, this book has really forced me to always look inward of what is my part, because if as the as the CEO of the company, if there's any failures, what this book preaches is that that's because of me. And they not only that, but on a client level, when people want to argue or, when you have that confrontational phone call, ultimately all the client is generally looking for is someone to take accountability. And they're so used to everybody on their project pointing fingers to the designer, the builder, the somebody else. But if you're always that guy that says, you know what, it's my fault. I could have spoken to the designer. I could have done something more proactively. This is why I'm accountable for the situation that we're in. It immediately diffuses that because that's so rare that I feel like it almost takes the wind out of the client's sails. They're shocked by it. And what else are they going to say? It is your fault. You're right. It is my fault. I could have done something differently.
The book talks about decentralized command. How do you practice that in your business?
Yeah, that's one that's been, and this is why I reread, because when we first started doing it and the company was 10 people, and now that we're, approaching 2025, the team's bigger than ever. Communication becomes exponentially more difficult. And so applying this principle of decentralizing command, empowering people at different levels in the company, it's crucial. You can't operate at a larger size without doing that. And that's also been kind of one of our cultural struggles as well, because as a smaller company, we prided ourselves that everybody was in the room together all the time. We'd have big company meetings on a regular basis. One of our favorite meetings, I call it beers with the boss. Being in Utah, we bring root beer and we bring beer, but it's at the end of a work week. Everybody would get together. We talk about what went well, what didn't. But as we get larger, we've really had to separate, as we have technicians, and the book talks about how you want to always have, teams no larger than 5, I believe is what it talks about in there. So we
Like
try to
SEAL
divide
teams,
all.
right? And that the
Yeah.
structure, the model of a SEAL team.
Yep. And then as soon as it gets bigger, there's, depleted efficiency after that. And so we try to look at every group in the company and make sure that nothing is larger than 5, that no one is in charge of a team larger than 5. And then that person reports to someone else and so far and so forth. So that decentralized command, as we continue to grow, is only going to be a bigger factor of what we do and how we operate.
I'm curious, do some elements or some of the themes around extreme ownership I'm assuming they have to make their way into the way that you hire or the way that you are looking at the right people that are ultimately not going to be just a skill fit and a salary fit, but a culture fit. Because what you've described to me is a very clearly defined company culture. How do you implement that into your hiring process with folks?
Yeah, in every interview, I bring up these principles. I ask them to talk about, opportunities they've had to express ownership of things. And it's becomes apparent very quickly when you have somebody talking about challenges that they faced in the past, how they're going to reference those challenges. It's unavoidable that they're either going to say, well, the reason it didn't work out on my last job was because I had a bad project manager or whatever. And you can quickly, and if you can point out to that individual, was it a bad project manager or is there something you could have done? No, it was all them. There's nothing more I could have done. Well, okay, not that that individual doesn't have hope, but it's a red flag that it's something that you need to consider, versus those types of people that, may have been let go from a previous company, but say, you know what, this is what I did. I shouldn't have done that. This is what I've learned become of it. because of it. They're taking ownership. It takes a big person to admit that, especially in an interview where they're trying to look good. And those are the type of people that we want. I tell my team all the time that, nobody's in trouble if you're taking all the responsibility that you can of every situation. We had a great example of this. We have a wonderful technician. His name's Tyson. Made a mistake on a shade install, called me. I happened to be on vacation at the time, said, this is what happened. This is why it was my fault. This is what I could have done differently. This is what I put in place to resolve the issue. I've talked to the builder. I've talked to this, I fixed it, but it was important to me to let you know that this mistake happened. And I told him, I was like, then no. And he was, afraid there'd be some sort of reprimand. And I was like, nope, you nailed it. That's all I could have asked. So you're probably not going to make that mistake again. Nope, absolutely not. Great. Let's all move on. Nobody's in trouble. Let's, and I think that was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, do not let this get in your head the rest of the day. Go be excellent, go be efficient, go get the rest of the job done. Called me out at the end of the day. And he said, that was such a great experience because I was, thought it was going to derail my entire day. And instead I felt empowered and motivated and trusted. Thank you for doing that. And those types of little moments with your staff to show trust in them, it only makes them more loyal, work harder in the future, and makes them not afraid to make mistakes or take risks, which I want them to do.
I can imagine any manager that's listening to this interview and hears you describe the way that, was it Tyler that responded?
Tyson.
Tyson, that Tyson just communicated to you. I can't imagine anyone that manages people that would not be over the moon if their people would call them, admit the mistake, talk about the solution, talk about the fact that they've learned their lesson and they're going to move forward. Like that's the dream member of your team. I don't care whether
Yeah.
it's you doing it to them or them doing it to you. Like that's excellence.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's one thing. We have a wall that I got the idea for some other great integrators, but we have our employee wall that's got a picture of everybody with their families. And a big part of our sales process is, as we're meeting with the client in the showroom, and we get towards the end, and inevitably, kind of address, did we know they're looking at different companies or whatever? We make sure to drive a point home that anyone that tells you they're the only ones that can get a specific product, like, that is not the type of company you want to go with, because nowadays in our current situation in our industry, anybody can get just about anything. And we tell them that we're like, so your decision should be made on what other people don't have. And really the only thing we can claim to have that nobody else can claim to have is all the people on this wall. And we talk about the individuals that are part of our company and how, one of the best compliments that we get on a very regular basis from clients after the fact is that, of all the subcontractors that are working in their home, our guys, they actually enjoy having around. They enjoy communicating with them. They're clean, they're respectful. And that's a really hard message to get people to understand when they're seeing your proposal maybe 10% higher than somebody else's. But that's what they're buying. They're buying the fact that we have dedicated a lot of time and a lot of resources to create better people that are going to be spending a lot of time in their homes.
And there's so much wisdom in that. Folks that are listening, write that one down. That's awesome. Awesome delivery. Brad, I want to pivot here to 2025, the economy, the outlook. We're right now. This show is going to be presented here at the end of March. And we're right in the middle of this tariff wars that are going on with Mexico, with Canada, with Europe, with China. And it's causing, I don't know any other way to say it, it's causing havoc with markets and with, I can only imagine with you, like what are you experiencing? What are your vendors experiencing? What's the story right now?
Yeah, just like all the other integrators, we started receiving emails about a month and a half, 2 months ago, announcing price increases. Nobody likes to see that, and it was one after the next, which, again, is a challenge, but also presents an opportunity. Back to that good principle, it allowed us to actively reach out to our clients and our builders, notify them this is the state of the AV market. This is what we're heading into. These are things that we need to plan and prepare for. We put together a really nice email, thanks to One Firefly's assistance, that we sent out to all of our customers, educating them on what the tariffs are about, and encouraging those that may be on the fence for a project to reach out sooner than later, and also to kind of provide a warning to our clients that if they are currently engaged in a project with us, that we're doing everything we can to mitigate the effects on their project. And if they have concerns, please reach out to us. Which, instead of getting angry phone calls about price increases, clients reach out and say, thank you for looking ahead, letting me know that's coming. What can we do about it? We talk about options. So it's, as much as I hate to see costs going up, there are some opportunities to show that we're more proactive than some of their other subcontractors they may be working with.
There's an important lesson here, though. What I did not hear you say is my prices are going up and I'm going to eat it because I don't want to pass that on to my client. That could be potentially dangerous to your business. No?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. We, want to avoid that at all costs. And there's really no reason to have to do that if you've been proactive. That's a reactive approach if you're going to get hit with those prices. Because all the clients that we've reached out to, and we discuss options. Hey, you closed on a job, but on some of the project working on right now is over $1 million in lighting and AV. We can have that conversation about what makes sense to bring in now. Do they want to arrange for a storage facility? Do they want to talk about storage fees? But they're also getting product that may be outdated by the time they actually need it. So we're able to talk through all of those conversations and then set a clear expectation based on their input. Okay, then you understand what's happening. So when your house gets ready for trim in a year and a half from now, there's going to be a change order that's going to be sent to tell you what all the new pricing is. And this is nothing new. The pandemic was practice for all of this. This is lightweight compared to what we were dealing with the pandemic. And so I feel like our team is already experienced with, and we've learned a lot of lessons from what not to do and how to communicate with clients about price increases. So, and it also presents opportunities, on a buying level. This presents the chance to stock up on inventory that's going to be worth more in a month from now. So, there's always some opportunity there.
When you look out to the balance of 25, are you what are your beliefs about how our industry, the custom integration industry, is going to fare?
I think we're always going to continue to fare really well, especially in the higher end market. You know, people are never going to want to do these things themselves, no matter how easy installation or other things might be. On the larger scale, it's just not feasible. Clients don't have time for it. So the industry is strong in that regard. I'd say the biggest obstacles that we're, at least in Utah, that we're facing right now is the fact that when the middle market crashed with interest rates and things, a lot of the filler jobs disappeared because those people weren't looking at doing those projects. They were on a tighter budget. The luxury clients had all the money that, they were still cutting checks for homes and whatnot. But the problem we ran into was on our, we pride ourselves, and one of the big parts of our business is we really focus on working with targeting builders, interior designers, architects on that level. That's where most of our projects come from. And so as we've been working with them, their challenges are our challenges. That's just the reality of the situation. Whatever their reality is, our reality is. If they can't land that next build, then we don't get the opportunity to land that next build. And the feedback that we were getting from them was, as the middle market was going non-existent in the Salt Lake Valley, well, all of those home builders had to go somewhere. And so they all rebranded as luxury home builders, and they all want to build in Park City in these luxury neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, they don't know what the costs of permitting and snow removal and all of these other, complications are, as well as building homes of the scale. And unfortunately, a lot of the clients that we're dealing with are shopping from their home on the East Coast. And so they're not really familiar with who they're talking to. And so they reach out to a bunch of different home builders, and it's really tempting when they get that bid from that guy that they don't know isn't qualified to do their project, to believe that he can build that $10 million home for $6 million. And so our builders on the luxury side were getting beat up really bad because they just were they were being told, as we've all been told, you're just too expensive. You're too expensive. And so they were coming to us saying, you guys got to find lower cost solutions, because having a $500,000 AV budget is just not is not helping me win this job, especially when it's not necessarily increasing the home value.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had to really look twice on, before we always prided ourselves on going straight to the solution that the homeowner wanted. Hey, this is what you're going to want, and this is why your budget needs to be X, Y, and Z. Now we've had to take a different approach for our builders, of saying, okay, this will get the job done. So yeah, it should be 150, but you could do something for 30 or 40. And at least that, and we make sure that it's not a bait and switch, that it would actually work. And then once the builder gets that price, and once they lock in the build, and once we actually start building a relationship with the client, it's made the whole process so much slower, which I think all the integrators out there will appreciate, that just the sales process has gotten longer, because now we have to come in and say, okay, yes, this $30,000 or $50,000 solution will work, but let me educate you on why some other solutions may be better. And that's just the nature of what our builders have asked us to do. And as we've kind of resisted that more than we should have, we felt the pain last year. And so one of the things, I just had a meeting last week where we went with one of our builders and just had a heart to heart with them and said, look, we are, you're going to build 50 homes. You are our client. What do you need from us? And how can we tailor that specifically to you? And got some really great feedback on what they wanted, how they wanted our process to work, which in turn, I hope will bear some fruits going forward.
I'm curious, when you've had to downsize or downgrade, I know that could be a dirty word, the systems to accommodate the needs of your builders. Have there been any, in the theme of Jocko, have there been any good outcomes of that, where you've really had some epiphanies around solutions that actually are pretty cool and of value, even if they're downsized? Or are there any other silver linings to the fact that you've had to pivot in this way?
I think the silver lining is the strengthening the relationships with the builders and the architects, seeing our willingness to be more flexible and provide what they're asking for, without going below a line that's going to compromise. Because that's really what is going to, when people hear that, the temptation to a company that maybe is less experienced is to go too far below that line, because you're being told that it should be 100, but you're coming in at 20 when it really should be 30. And you've got to know where be strong enough to hold that line, to tell your builder, I know you want it 20, but it has to be 30, and this is why I cannot go below that number, because this client's never going to be happy. It's going to be a headache for everybody moving forward. So that's and gaining their trust. That's a big part about that, is gaining their trust, that look, you got to trust me. It just I cannot go below this. But it is, as far as on a product side, it only reinforces that there's a reason we have the products that we sell, because it is a disservice to use some of these products in the magnitude and the luxury level that these homes are going to. But for the most part, we're dealing with very wonderful, well-educated people that, once you can present that argument of what makes one access point better than another, they will come to that conclusion. But the challenge that we faced, and I would say most companies listening to this are going to resonate with them, is that salespeople have to work harder than ever. They've really been spoiled, to agree, over the last couple of years, of just work on their plate all the time. You didn't really have to try. It was just how fast you could work. And now you got to be more clever. You got to educate more slowly. You can't come across as too intimidating. So those sales skills have really had to be honed going into this market.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I always tell my team, selling is a verb, and it requires you to practice, best practices, good discovery, thorough patience, thorough understanding before you go out there. And it makes sense that in this time of, COVID, where there was just so much money sloshing around the system, so much renovation happening in homes. I could see how some salespeople got lazy during that time. That seems
Yeah,
super
and
logical.
I will veer away from calling them lazy, but I will say, because I know, my partner Justin, he's working harder than ever, and he worked harder than ever through the pandemic. It's just caused them to have a very quick shift in what that sales process looks like, how they're communicating, and how you're educating the client. Because before we had the ability to just say, this is what you want to do, trust me, and now you've got to educate, educate, educate. So
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so to round out our time together here, I'm looking at the clock, and I've only got you for a handful more minutes. And maybe this pivot that you've had to do around builders is going to tie these ideas together. But something that I know that you've participated in, Brad, for a while is this idea of really collaborating with your peers. So not just feeling like you're out there on an island having to figure this out with you and your business partner exclusively, but you guys have also been networking with integrators, and you do that through ProSource, and you also do that through this group called The Collective. Can you just kind of talk about maybe your evolution of thinking and kind of learning to lean in and work with others, people similar to you, maybe in different markets, so they're not your competitors down the street, but they're people out there fighting the same battles that you're fighting. And I know, because I've talked to you many times, like, you value that counsel greatly.
oh yeah, it's immeasurable, the impact that those relationships have had on our company and where we are today. And everyone in this industry that starts an AV company kind of goes through the same evolution, where you show up to CEDIA, it's overwhelming. You probably don't talk to many people other than the vendors. And then eventually, maybe you go into a buying group, and it's kind of a similar experience, just a little bit smaller level. So many people don't really, create a lot of one-on-one opportunities. Um, but my advice to anybody out there that goes to those and doesn't make a new friend every time is that your business, you owe it to your business. You're spending money, your time to be there. That time, both when people are lecturing and when you're just, grabbing a coffee, you need to be talking to everybody around you all of the time, because those relationships that you form there are priceless. Because I had some incredible moments, when kind of how I got brought into the collective the first times. I made one of my best friends out there, Mark Fisher with Origin, great guy. He's a friend of a lot of people that are probably listening to this. But it was nice enough to bring us on a trip to Cabo with a bunch of great integrators. And a moment that stood out to me was, one of the mornings I woke up, I did my gym thing. There was one other guy at the bar. His name was Craig Curran, who is no longer with us, but a wonderful human. Saw me and was like, "Hey, you're the only one up. You want to come grab breakfast?" And I had no idea who he was, didn't know that he owned a big company in California. Sat down at breakfast, and the next thing you know, I was realizing who he was, the size of his company. At the time, we were, 7, 8 people. He had 100. And the amount
Wow.
that, the insight that I gained over that little breakfast that, probably didn't mean a whole lot to him, to me was game changing. And then that kind of is spread out from there as I made new friends, as I became a member of the collective, and those individuals. You just cannot afford to talk to other people, because every challenge that we face, whether it's creating a new process or procedure and reaching out to other individuals, we are custom, but we're really not. And everybody in our industry is reinventing the wheel over and over again. And that's a very costly process. So if you can make good friends that you trust, that have successful businesses, and say, how have you overcome this obstacle? I don't know how many times, that has been the biggest shortcut I have ever taken, because a process that maybe took them 6 months with a larger team than I have and more resources than I have, they were able to pass along to me, and I was able to implement in my business in a matter of weeks. So that involvement in the collective and ProSource, and just anybody that I meet at conferences, at the bar, having breakfast, at the gym, doesn't matter. talk to everybody, because you never know who you're going to meet and what insight they may be able to help you out with.
Part of that process, Brad, though, is being open to receiving input and counsel. And I'm going to challenge, not everyone is ready to do that. Were you always of that mind, or was this something that you learned along the way?
No, I'm kind of bringing it full circle. One of the chapters in Extreme Ownership is check your ego. That's one of the principles in that book, and I think it's really important because, especially, as we started to get bigger, as we were starting to get 15 people hitting 5 million in sales, whatever, you start to feel like you're doing pretty good and you've got things figured out, and then you'll meet somebody and you may instantly judge them by who knows what. But if you are just open to checking your ego, that even that guy that maybe is a two-man outfit doing $1 million a year, maybe he's found a solution that you're not aware of. So there's no room for judgment in those conversations, because big or small ideas are coming from everywhere. And that guy that may be smaller than you today may be bigger than you in the future. So make friends with him. Find out what he knows. That's been a big part that's helped our company, during the pandemic and others when there's product shortages. If you're the guy that's friendly and polite to the vendors and not the one treating them like you feel maybe your clients treat you, demanding certain treatments, but if you're looking at those vendor relationships as partnerships instead, the kindness that comes back to you tenfold is huge. My company during the pandemic, we'd have opportunities where name tags would fall off of product at distribution and happen to find our name on it. Well, why? Because I'm buying the guy steaks every Christmas and I know his family, right? So, that's the other big input I would give to anybody newer that's not taking advantage of that, is you can't afford to not be nice to people. And when you're nice to people and when you have friends at these shows, everything is better. You enjoy yourself. You're surrounded by friends everywhere you go. You're only doing yourself a disservice financially and emotionally by not being nice to people.
Amen. I'm going to wrap it there. I think that's a perfect point to end the interview on. Brad, thank you for coming on Automation Unplugged. That was probably one of the more dense, if not the densest, episodes with advice and wisdom that I've recorded. And that's saying a lot. I've interviewed a lot of folks, Brad, over many years. So I just want to say thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And a big shout out to the whole One Firefly team. I work with Kat and Hillary over there on a regular basis. Wonderful people over there that we enjoy, that are a big part of our business. So thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. For those that want to get in touch with you directly, can we share some contact information?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's go with your website. Why don't you talk us through what's the website domain?
Yeah,
This is for the people listening, those that are watching, they see it on the screen.
argentanow.com. And then my email's brad@argentanow. So anyone that wants to reach out to either of those, our phone number, 801-996-3146 is our office line. Feel free to call or text that number if you want any advice. I'm always happy to talk to anybody out there that may be listening.
Awesome. And then one more, a social handle you provided us.
Oh, yeah, our Instagram is at Argenta Automation.
Argenta Automation. Well, Brad, that's going to wrap it up, my man. Thank you so much for joining me here on Automation Unplugged, man. It was a pleasure to have you on.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.